Boi. Come. Bashalan. In the peace. Atele. Putting crown on. Byler. Her husband. Boi Kailar. Come bride. This is a beautiful Hebrew wedding song, as if the angels in heaven are calling for the bride who has been waiting for 6,000 years to stand up bravely and put on the crown of glory for the coming King of Heaven.
Hello everyone, welcome to Enoch Talk Show. Today we continue the story of Jacob, part 14. Joseph was lost, Jacob was in tears and turned to stone in despair. Isaac's comfort was useless, and the she-wolf was finding her son with the same disaster. In the last few parts we talked about the two nations are in the belly of Rebekah. We also went into detail about the meaning of the names Jacob and Esau. Jacob deceived the birthright with red bean soup. Jacob cheated the blessing. These two cheats are double quotation marks, referring to the eyes of people on earth. We talked about Jacob's double marriage and sister's jealousy. Jacob's scheme and Laban's 10 times altered Jacob's wages. Rachel nearly died from the idol Laban chased after Jacob's family to kill them. Esau was so angry to come to kill Jacob, and the angel stopped this mighty tiger. Shechem raped his beloved, and was destroyed by his own evil. Jacob's roar shook the kings, 100 against hundreds of thousands. Okay, let's talk about it below. Joseph was lost, Jacob was in tears and turned to stone in despair. We skip ahead of Joseph being sold, and we'll talk more about it when we tell Joseph's story. Look first at the scene described in the scriptures when Jacob heard the loss of Joseph. Then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. And he returned to his brothers and said, "The lad is no more, and where shall I go?" So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they sent the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, "We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?" And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him." Without doubt Joseph is torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, and he said, "For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Genesis 37 verses 29 to 35 NKJV. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years. So Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, being old and full of days. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Genesis 35 verses 28 to 29 NKJV. The scriptures first talk about Isaac's death, and then talk about Joseph's betrayal. In fact, Isaac died after Joseph's incident. If he lived a few more years, he would see Joseph's return, but the days set by God were fulfilled, so he was taken by God. 180 is the number of 10 times the life, so it is a full life. Abraham was supposed to live to be 180 years old, but because he was too worried about Esau, God took him 5 years earlier. And Jacob should also live to be 180 years old. As a result, because of Joseph's loss and sadness, he said things he shouldn't have said to Pharaoh. In the end, God subtracted the number of words he said, 1 word minus 1 year in his lifespan, and finally he lived to be 147 years old. We will discuss these in detail later. In these verses, we can't see how sad Jacob was. For ordinary people, if you have 12 children, you should not be so sad to lose one out of 12. Therefore, it is difficult for ordinary people to understand Jacob's heart. Joseph was his most loved one. We can understand from the book of Jasher how sad Jacob was. It showed that he was so sad that he became as cold as a stone, and he was sad for more than 20 years. Even after he saw Joseph, he still could not dig himself out from sadness. Finally, he made mistakes to show sadness to Pharaoh. So, we have to remember what David did. After the grief, we must stop it in time to continue, otherwise the grief would consume us and do wrong things. Let us read the book of Jasher. Chapter 43. And Reuben tore his garments, and he said, "The child is not there, and how shall I reconcile my father about him if he be dead?" And he went to his brethren and found them grieving on account of Joseph, and counseling together how to reconcile their father about him. And Reuben said unto his brethren, I came to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not there. What then shall we say unto our father? For my father will only seek the lad from me. 5 And his brethren answered him, saying, Thus and thus we did, and our hearts afterward smote us on account of this act, and we now sit to seek a pretext how we shall reconcile our father to it. 6 And Reuben said unto them, What is this you have done to bring down the gray hairs of our father in sorrow to the grave? The thing is not good that you have done. 7 And Reuben sat with them, and they all rose up and swore to each other not to tell this thing unto Jacob, and they all said, The man who will tell this to our father or his household, or who will report this to any of the children of the land, we will all rise up against him and slay him with the sword. 8 And the sons of Jacob feared each other in this matter, from the youngest to the oldest, and no one spoke a word, and they concealed the thing in their hearts. 9 And they afterward sat down to determine and invent something to say unto their father Jacob concerning all these things. 10 And Issachar said unto them, Here is an advice for you, if it seem good in your eyes to do this thing. Take the coat which belongeth to Joseph and tear it, and kill a kid of the goats and dip it in its blood. 11 And send it to our father, and when he seeth it he will say, An evil beast has devoured him. Therefore tear ye his coat, and behold his blood will be upon his coat, and by your doing this we shall be free of our father's murmurings. 12 And Issachar's advice pleased them, and they hearkened unto him, and they did according to the word of Issachar which he had counseled them. 13 And they hastened and took Joseph's coat and tore it, and they killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat in the blood of the kid, and then trampled it in the dust. And they sent the coat to their father Jacob by the hand of Naphtali, and they commanded him to say these words. 14 We had gathered in the cattle and had come as far as the road to Shechem and farther, when we found this coat upon the road in the wilderness dipped in blood and in dust. Now therefore know whether it be thy son's coat or not. 15 And Naphtali went, and he came unto his father, and he gave him the coat. And he spoke unto him all the words which his brethren had commanded him. 16 And Jacob saw Joseph's coat, and he knew it, and he fell upon his face to the ground, and became as still as a stone. And he afterward rose up and cried out with a loud and weeping voice, and he said, It is the coat of my son Joseph. 17 And Jacob hastened and sent one of his servants to his sons, who went to them and found them coming along the road with the flock. 18 And the sons of Jacob came to their father about evening, and behold, their garments were torn, and dust was upon their heads, and they found their father crying out and weeping with a loud voice. 19 And Jacob said unto his sons, Tell me truly, what evil have you this day suddenly brought upon me? And they answered their father Jacob, saying, We were coming along this day after the flock had been gathered in, and we came as far as the city of Shechem by the road in the wilderness, and we found this coat filled with blood upon the ground, and we knew it, and we sent unto thee if thou couldst know it. 20 And Jacob heard the words of his sons, and he cried out with a loud voice, and he said, It is the coat of my son, an evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is rent in pieces, for I sent him this day to see whether it was well with you and well with the flocks, and to bring me word again from you. And he went as I commanded him, and this has happened to him this day, whilst I thought my son was with you. 21 And the sons of Jacob answered and said, He did not come to us, neither have we seen him from the time of our going out from thee until now. 22 And when Jacob heard their words, he again cried out aloud, and he rose up and tore his garments, and he put sackcloth upon his loins, and he wept bitterly, and he mourned and lifted up his voice in weeping, and exclaimed and said these words. 23 Joseph my son, O my son Joseph, I sent thee this day after the welfare of thy brethren, and behold thou hast been torn in pieces, through my hand has this happened to my son. 24 It grieves me for thee Joseph my son, it grieves me for thee, how sweet wast thou to me during life, and now how exceedingly bitter is thy death to me. 25 That I had died in thy stead Joseph my son, for it grieves me sadly for thee my son, O my son, my son. Joseph my son, where art thou, and where hast thou been drawn? Arouse, arouse from thy place, and come and see my grief for thee, O my son Joseph. 26 Come now and number the tears gushing from my eyes down my cheeks, and bring them up before the Lord, that his anger may turn from me. 27 Joseph my son, how didst thou fall? By the hand of one by whom no one had fallen from the beginning of the world unto this day, for thou hast been put to death by the smiting of an enemy, inflicted with cruelty, but surely I know that this has happened to thee, on account of the multitude of my sins. 28 Arouse now, and see how bitter is my trouble for thee my son, although I did not rear thee, nor fashion thee, nor give thee breath and soul, but it was God who formed thee, and built thy bones, and covered them with flesh, and breathed in thy nostrils the breath of life, and then he gave thee unto me. 29 Now truly God, who gave thee unto me, he has taken thee from me, and such then has befallen thee. 30 And Jacob continued to speak like unto these words concerning Joseph, and he wept bitterly, he fell to the ground and became still. 31 And all the sons of Jacob, seeing their father's trouble, they repented of what they had done, and they also wept bitterly. 32 And Judah rose up and lifted his father's head from the ground, and placed it upon his lap, and he wiped his father's tears from his cheeks, and Judah wept an exceeding great weeping, whilst his father's head was reclining upon his lap, still as a stone. 33 And the sons of Jacob saw their father's trouble, and they lifted up their voices and continued to weep, and Jacob was yet lying upon the ground still as a stone. 34 And all his sons and his servants' children rose up and stood round him to comfort him, and he refused to be comforted. 35 And the whole household of Jacob rose up and mourned a great mourning on account of Joseph and their father's trouble, and the intelligence reached Isaac, the son of Abraham, the father of Jacob, and he wept bitterly on account of Joseph, he and all his household, and he went from the place where he dwelt in Hebron, and his men with him, and he comforted Jacob his son, and he refused to be comforted. 36 And after this, Jacob rose up from the ground, and his tears were running down his cheeks, and he said unto his sons, Rise up and take your swords and your bows, and go forth into the field, and seek whether you can find my son's body, and bring it unto me, that I may bury it. 37 Seek also, I pray you, among the beasts, and hunt them, and that which shall come the first before you seize, and bring it unto me. Perhaps the Lord will this day pity my affliction, and prepare before you that which did tear my son in pieces, and bring it unto me, and I will avenge the cause of my son. 38 And his sons did as their father had commanded them, and they rose up early in the morning, and each took his sword and his bow in his hand, and they went forth into the field to hunt the beasts. 39 And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping and walking to and fro in the house, and smiting his hands together, saying, Joseph my son, Joseph my son. 40 And the sons of Jacob went into the wilderness to seize the beasts, and behold a wolf came toward them, and they seized him, and brought him unto their father, and they said unto him, This is the first we have found, and we have brought him unto thee as thou didst command us, and thy son's body we could not find. 41 And Jacob took the beast from the hands of his sons, and he cried out with a loud and weeping voice, holding the beast in his hand, and he spoke with a bitter heart unto the beast, Why didst thou devour my son Joseph, and how didst thou have no fear of the God of the earth, or of my trouble for my son Joseph? 42 And thou didst devour my son for naught, because he committed no violence, and didst thereby render me culpable on his account, therefore God will require him that is persecuted. 43 And the Lord opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Jacob with its words, and it answered Jacob and spoke these words unto him. 44 As God liveth, who created us in the earth, and as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I did not see thy son, neither did I tear him to pieces, but from a distant land I also came to seek my son who went from me this day, and I know not whether he be living or dead. 45 And I came this day into the field to seek my son, and your sons found me, and seized me and increased my grief, and have this day brought me before thee, and I have now spoken all my words to thee. 46 And now therefore, O Son of Man, I am in thy hands, and do unto me this day as it may seem good in thy sight, but by the life of God who created me, I did not see thy son, nor did I tear him to pieces, neither has the flesh of man entered my mouth all the days of my life. 47 And when Jacob heard the words of the beast he was greatly astonished, and sent forth the beast from his hand, and she went her way. 48 And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping for Joseph day after day, and he mourned for his son many days. Someone may wonder how could Jacob is so sad losing one of sons out of 12 sons? In fact, Jacob loved Joseph so much that not only because Joseph was the son from Rachel to whom he loved the most. This is a superficial reason, because he already knew at that time that his wife was Leah, so Leah's children were his own offspring. The sons from Rachel were for his brother Esau, so they belonged to Adam's family. But it was because he knew that the life of the entire family of Israel would be in Joseph's shoulder, and the entire family of Israel escaped by grabbing Joseph's heels, so if Joseph was gone, the whole family would have no hope. This is very similar to Abraham's offering of Isaac, because Isaac was the one to whom God's promised salvation. Without him, there was no place for salvation. When Joseph was dead, and any hope for Jacob's house was diminished, so whoever's heel was to be caught. At that time, Jacob thought of Benjamin, and maybe his descendants would produce the Savior, the Messiah King Joseph in the doomsday. So, he immediately arranged a marriage for little Benjamin, and a few years later, and finally Benjamin had 10 sons by the time he met Joseph. So, this action just shows us that Jacob believed in God's arrangement, and Jacob's family grabbed Esau's heel to escape the great disaster. And Esau's heel will be either from Joseph's or Benjamin's descendants. Back then, God used 7 plus 7, 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of poor harvest to complete the prophecy, and today we are in the last few years in the 7 years of abundance in the doomsday, and this time it is the true entity, and we will talk about this in detail later. Back to Jacob, the book of Jasher also records the details of Isaac's death. Book of Jasher, chapter 47. 1 And Isaac the son of Abraham was still living in those days in the land of Canaan. He was very aged, 180 years old, and Esau his son, the brother of Jacob, was in the land of Edom, and he and his sons had possessions in it amongst the children of Seir. 2 And Esau heard that his father's time was drawing nigh to die, and he and his sons and household came unto the land of Canaan, unto his father's house, and Jacob and his sons went forth from the place where they dwelt in Hebron, and they all came to their father Isaac, and they found Esau and his sons in the tent. 3 And Jacob and his sons sat before his father Isaac, and Jacob was still mourning for his son Joseph. 4 And Isaac said unto Jacob, Bring me hither thy sons, and I will bless them. And Jacob brought his 11 children before his father Isaac. 5 And Isaac placed his hands upon all the sons of Jacob, and he took hold of them and embraced them, and kissed them one by one, and Isaac blessed them on that day. And he said unto them, May the God of your fathers bless you, and increase your seed like the stars of heaven for number. 6 And Isaac also blessed the sons of Esau, saying, May God cause you to be a dread and a terror to all that will behold you, and to all your enemies. 7 And Isaac called Jacob and his sons, and they all came and sat before Isaac. And Isaac said unto Jacob, The Lord God of the whole earth said unto me, Unto thy seed will I give this land for an inheritance, if thy children keep my statutes and my ways, and I will perform unto them the oath which I swore unto thy father Abraham. 8 Now therefore, my son, teach thy children and thy children's children to fear the Lord, and to go in the good way which will please the Lord thy God. For if you keep the ways of the Lord and his statutes, the Lord will also keep unto you his covenant with Abraham, and will do well with you and your seed all the days. 9 And when Isaac had finished commanding Jacob and his children, he gave up the ghost and died, and was gathered unto his people. 10 And Jacob and Esau fell upon the face of their father Isaac, and they wept. And Isaac was 180 years old when he died in the land of Canaan, in Hebron, and his sons carried him to the cave of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought from the children of Heth for a possession of a burial place. 11 And all the kings of the land of Canaan went with Jacob and Esau to bury Isaac, and all the kings of Canaan showed Isaac great honor at his death. 12 And the sons of Jacob and the sons of Esau went barefooted round about, walking and lamenting until they reached Kirith-arba. 13 And Jacob and Esau buried their father Isaac in the cave of Machpelah, which is in Kirith-arba in Hebron, and they buried him with very great honor, as at the funeral of kings. 14 And Jacob and his sons, and Esau and his sons, and all the kings of Canaan made a great and heavy mourning, and they buried him and mourned for him many days. 15 And at the death of Isaac, he left his cattle and his possessions and all belonging to him to his sons, and Esau said unto Jacob, Behold, I pray thee, all that our father has left we will divide it in 2 parts, and I will have the choice. And Jacob said, We will do so. 16 And Jacob took all that Isaac had left in the land of Canaan, the cattle and the property, and he placed them in 2 parts before Esau and his sons. And he said unto Esau, Behold, all this is before thee, choose thou unto thyself the half which thou wilt take. 17 And Jacob said unto Esau, Hear thou, I pray thee, what I will speak unto thee, saying, The Lord God of heaven and earth spoke unto our fathers Abraham and Isaac, saying, Unto thy seed will I give this land for an inheritance forever. 18 Now therefore all that our father has left is before thee, and behold, all the land is before thee, choose thou from them what thou desirest. 19 If thou desirest the whole land, take it for thee and thy children forever, and I will take this riches, and if thou desirest the riches, take it unto thee, and I will take this land for me and for my children to inherit it forever. 20 And Nebaioth, the son of Ishmael, was then in the land with his children, and Esau went on that day and consulted with him, saying, 21 Thus has Jacob spoken unto me, and thus has he answered me, now give thy advice, and we will hear. 22 And Nebaioth said, What is this that Jacob hath spoken unto thee? Behold, all the children of Canaan are dwelling securely in their land, and Jacob saith he will inherit it with his seed all the days. 23 Go now therefore, and take all thy father's riches, and leave Jacob thy brother in the land, as he has spoken. 24 And Esau rose up and returned to Jacob, and did all that Nebaioth the son of Ishmael had advised, and Esau took all the riches that Isaac had left, the souls, the beasts, the cattle and the property, and all the riches. He gave nothing to his brother Jacob, and Jacob took all the land of Canaan, from the brook of Egypt unto the river Euphrates, and he took it for an everlasting possession, and for his children and for his seed after him forever. 25 Jacob also took from his brother Esau the cave of Machpelah, which is in Hebron, which Abraham had bought from Ephron for a possession of a burial place for him and his seed forever. 26 And Jacob wrote all these things in the book of purchase, and he signed it, and he testified all this with 4 faithful witnesses. 27 And these are the words which Jacob wrote in the book, saying, The land of Canaan and all the cities of the Hittites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, and the Girgashites, all the 7 nations from the river of Egypt unto the river Euphrates. 28 And the city of Hebron Kirith-Arba, and the cave which is in it, the whole did Jacob buy from his brother Esau for value, for a possession and for an inheritance for his seed after him forever. 29 And Jacob took the book of purchase and the signature, the command and the statutes and the revealed book, and he placed them in an earthen vessel in order that they should remain for a long time, and he delivered them into the hands of his children. 30 Esau took all that his father had left him after his death from his brother Jacob, and he took all the property, from man and beast, camel and ass, ox and lamb, silver and gold, stones and bdellium, and all the riches which had belonged to Isaac the son of Abraham. There was nothing left which Esau did not take unto himself, from all that Isaac had left after his death. 31 And Esau took all this, and he and his children went home to the land of Seir the Horite, away from his brother Jacob and his children. 32 And Esau had possessions amongst the children of Seir, and Esau returned not to the land of Canaan from that day forward. 33 And the whole land of Canaan became an inheritance to the children of Israel for an everlasting inheritance, and Esau with all his children inherited the mountain of Seir. You see, Esau despised blessing again, so he despised it when he was 15 years old, and now he despised it at 120 years old. This is a habit. Jacob asked Esau to sign again and sell the birthright. This time it was absolutely true, because he didn't know what the title was. His teacher Satan didn't tell him at all until Jacob returned to heaven. Yes, Satan should have told him the birthright truth when Jacob died, in order to destroy Jacob's funeral. That was when Esau knew the truth. The next book will say, Joseph shook the 4 corners in the kingdom. Jacob broke through his life barrier to let Benjamin go. Sarah's sweet song was melodious. Jacob waked up and reunited with Joseph. The 15th part of Jacob's story is also the most joyous moment for the Jacob family. The past 22 years had been spent in despair and sorrow, and now everything was unimaginable. Thank you for listening to the Enoch Talk Show. See you next time.